Hello, and welcome to this first lecture on this new section on refining and updating crisis plans in this course, Crisis Management. So, in this particular section, we will talk about how to refine and update crisis plan. And part of that we will cover in this lecture is to incorporate lessons learned into future planning. So, how do you think you can incorporate lessons learned into future planning? Any thoughts? Before we do that, let's understand that after handling a crisis, it's essential to analyze mistakes, identify successes, and refine strategy to enhance future preparedness. Organizations that systematically integrate lessons learned, improve resilience, reduce risk, and respond more effectively in future crises. So that's the importance of incorporating lessons learned into future planning. What are the steps? The first step is to document and categorize lessons learned, right? And because that can help you a structure that will help because a structured post-crisis review report captures key takeaways for your future references. Now, what are the things you need to do there? One is to gather the key insights from various people like crisis management team, uh, where you will talk about the decision making efficiency, team coordination, from operations team for about execution bottlenecks and disruption, and from communication and PR team for messaging, media response, and stakeholders reaction, and legal and compliance finally for regulatory issues, lawsuits, or fines, etc. Then you categorize the lessons into key areas. And what are the key areas? One is the response timing and coordination. And there you look at questions like, was the crisis detected and escalated quickly? Did the response team act within the golden hour? Then you look at communication and public perception, where you look at whether the crisis messages were clear, transparent, and well received. Was misinformation controlled effectively? Then you look at operational and financial impact. Was the disruptions minimized? How did the crisis affect revenue, legal exposure, or brand trust? So let's take a look at example of how did Starbucks do it in 2018 in the racial bias incident. So after public backlash, Starbucks documented its mistakes and revamped its racial sensitivity training and customer services policies. And that's what the lessons learned helped Starbucks in 2018. Second thing would be to then update the crisis playbook and response protocol because crisis plans must evolve based on the real world experiences. And there are two main things that you need to do. First, to refine crisis response framework. And there you need to adjust escalation protocols to improve response speed. And the second thing would be to define crisis severity levels more clearly and improve decision making structures to avoid delays. Second thing would be to enhance communication strategies where you update the pre-approved crisis messaging templates, designate additional trained spokesperson for public media response, and strengthen social media tools to track sentiment in real time. Boeing in 2018-19 for in their 737 MAX crisis did a similar thing in terms of crisis playbook updates and response protocols. Boeing restructured its internal crisis response, messaging strategies, and regulatory compliance processes after severe backlash. The third step would be train and simulate with realistic scenarios because teams must practice crisis response regularly to stay sharp, right? And how do you do that? There are two key things. One is to conduct scenario-based drills where you use past crisis events to create realistic training exercises, simulate cyber attacks, PR crises, supply chain failures, and financial disruptions, and test decision-making speed, communication clarity, and execution efficiency. Second thing would be to develop a continuous learning culture in which you look at, you schedule biannual crisis drills, train employees at all levels for crisis awareness and escalation, and improve spokesperson media training. So, a training media training for the spokesperson for high pressure situation because crisis is a high pressure situation. Uh, Johnson & Johnson in 1982 in Tylenol recall on COVID-19 response in 2022. What did they do? Let's take a look at example of that. The company's proactive crisis training and ethical decision-making framework helped it respond quickly in both the crises. So step four be to strengthen monitoring and prevention system because a proactive approach reduces future risk. And again, there are two key things to do. One is to improve risk detection tools, where you can deploy AI-driven early warning systems in financial, operational, and reputational threats. Then also you can use real-time monitoring for cyber threats, supply chain risk, and regulatory changes. Second thing would be to reinforce cybersecurity and compliance, where you can do two key things. One is to regularly audit security measures here to prevent data breaches. Second is to stay ahead of new legal regulations to avoid compliance violations. Facebook did some of the same things in the 2018 Cambridge Analytica scandal. So after the data privacy issues, Facebook enhanced its data protection policies and regulatory compliances measures. So that's what you can do to strengthen monitoring and prevention system. What are the final takeaways? First is to document and categorize lessons learned from each crisis. Each crisis is important because there will be some things that you will learn which you don't need to then you can face that with more confidence and without issues there. Second would be to update crisis response playbooks with refined strategies based on these learnings. Then you train team regularly with scenario-based drills so that they are trained to handle that. Fourth would be to strengthen early warning systems, right, for risk detection. And finally, foster a crisis-ready culture by making learning an ongoing process. So what do we do next? So having looked at how to incorporate lessons learned into future planning, we will now look at how to regularly update policies and procedures to refine and update your crisis plans in the next lecture. So thank you so much for watching this first lecture on refining and updating crisis plans in this course of crisis management. I hope you're continuing to learn new things, continuing to enjoy, and I do look forward to see you again in the next lecture. Please feel free to message me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer your questions and do download the PDF file to take a look at anything that you need.